It began on an ordinary evening, the kind of night where silence seemed heavier than usual. The apartment lights were dim, casting long streaks of gray across the floor. I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom when I noticed something strange, the shadow at my feet. It wasn't following me. It wasn't moving the way it should. When I leaned forward toward the sink, my shadow stayed upright. When I raised my hand, it hesitated, then jerked as though tugged by invisible strings. My chest tightened, a cold shiver crawling up the back of my neck. Shadows don't think. They don't pause. But mine seemed to resist. I turned off the light, thinking I was imagining it. Darkness swallowed the room, and for a moment, I convinced myself it was all in my head. But when I stepped into the living room, the glow from the street lamp bled through the curtains, and there it was again. My shadow, stretched unnaturally long, curling at the edges, like smoke leaking from a wound. Then it moved, pointing. Its arm rose slowly, stiffly, like a puppet's. I froze as its blackened hand extended toward the far corner of the room, toward nothing. There was nothing there, just peeling wallpaper and an old bookshelf filled with dust. My throat tightened as the realization sank in. It wasn't just out of sync. It was trying to tell me something. I whispered aloud, voice trembling, "Will you see that I can't?" The shadow didn't answer. It just stood there, finger raised, unwavering. And in that moment, I knew my apartment was no longer empty. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the weight of that shadow pressing against me, pointing endlessly toward the same spot in the living room. I tried ignoring it. I draped thick curtains, turned on every light, even rearranged the furniture to block the corner from view. None of it mattered. Wherever I stood, however the light shifted, my shadow bent itself unnaturally, always directing its hand to the same exact place. By the third night, exhaustion blurred my thoughts. That's when the whispers began. At first, they were faint, like the sound of static seeping through walls. I pressed my ear to the plaster, straining to catch a word, a tone, anything. Slowly, it became clearer. Not one voice, but many. Murmurs overlapping in an eerie chorus, weaving in and out of each other. They weren't coming from the neighbors. They were coming from the walls themselves. I stepped back, heart hammering, and the whispers stopped. My breath echoed too loud in the silence. But then, from the corner where my shadow still pointed, a single word pushed its way into the room. A whisper, so sharp it felt like it was spoken directly into my ear. "Look!" The sound was unmistakable. A voice, low and raspy, soaked with decay. I stumbled back, clutching my chest, eyes darting between the corner and the floor. The air grew colder, thick with a dampness that didn't belong. My shadow, darker than ever, seemed to ripple with urgency, its arm trembling now as if desperate for me to obey. That corner was no longer just a part of the room. Something was inside it, waiting. I couldn't take it anymore. On the fourth night, trembling with equal parts fear and anger, I dragged the old bookshelf away from the wall. Dust rained down, and the smell of rot grew stronger, sour and wet. The plaster behind it was discolored, black veins spreading outward like mold trying to claw free. My shadow quivered, its arm lifting higher, as if it wanted to pierce through the wall itself. I pressed my palm against the stained plaster. The surface was damp, pulsing faintly under my touch, as if the wall itself was alive. My stomach churned, and then the whispers returned. But this time, they weren't muffled. They hissed directly into my ear, words tumbling over each other, incoherent except for one phrase that broke through the chaos. "Let me out." I stumbled back, ball rising in my throat. The wall shuddered, just slightly, but enough for me to see hairline cracks forming, spreading like spiderwebs across the plaster. A faint shape appeared beneath them, a silhouette. Human. Standing upright, impossibly still, its outline pressing outward as if straining to break free. I couldn't move. My mind screamed to run, but my legs locked in place. The figure inside the wall tilted its head, and though there was no face, no eyes, I felt its gaze lock on me. And then, My shadow betrayed me. It detached from my feet, stretching forward across the floor, sliding up the wall until it met the trapped figure's outline. Their shapes aligned perfectly, fusing into one. The plaster groaned. A low, wet cracking sound filled the room. The thing inside was pushing harder now, and it was using my shadow to guide its way out. The wall split with a sound like bones snapping under weight. A jagged crack tore open, and with it came a gush of icy air that reeked of earth long buried. My shadow writhed against the wall, trembling violently, until the figure within forced an arm through the plaster. It wasn't flesh. It was darker than pitch, a living void, dripping shadows that slithered down the wall like oil. The hand, if you could call it that, reached toward me. My breath caught in my throat, but I couldn't scream. I couldn't even blink. The whispers had grown deafening, layering over each other until they became a roar. Each voice spoke my name, over and over. My body shook as though the sound itself was inside me, rattling my bones. The figure stepped halfway out now, its outline towering, its head bent at an unnatural angle. My shadow clung to it, stretching and bending until it no longer resembled me at all. It had become its own being, loyal to something else. Then the arm struck. The blackened hand wrapped around my ankle and yanked. I collapsed, my body dragging across the floorboards. My nails tore as I clawed at the wood, splinters jamming beneath my skin. But the grip was unbreakable, pulling me closer to the widening hole in the wall. The plaster gave way with a groan, revealing not brick, not insulation, but darkness. A depth that shouldn't exist, a chasm of black stretching endlessly. Cold air screamed out of it, and in its echo I heard the words again, "Join me." My legs disappeared into the void first, the rest of me sliding after. And as I was pulled in, the last thing I saw was my shadow, smiling, though I had no mouth to give it. I woke to silence. Not in my apartment, not in any place I recognized. The air was thick, damp, and suffocating. When I opened my eyes, there was nothing, just a cavern of black, stretching infinitely, broken only by faint glimmers of movement in the dark. I tried to stand, but the floor wasn't solid. It shifted, soft and uneven, like standing on layers of skin. Then I realized this place was beneath my home, or rather, beneath every home. A labyrinth of forgotten things sealed behind walls, feeding on silence and neglect. In the endless black, dozens of figures stirred. Shadows. They crawled and shambled, each tethered to a shape above, pointing, always pointing. Their bodies were twisted, hollow versions of the people they once belonged to. I staggered backward, my breath shattering in my chest, until I felt a familiar presence behind me. My own shadow stood there, no longer bound to me, its form darker, sharper, alive. It leaned close, whispering in the voice I'd heard in the walls. "You were never alone. You only refused to see." The ground beneath me split. Shapes writhed in the cracks, faces, mouths, fingers clawing upward, begging. And then I saw the truth. The walls of my apartment had been their prison. Every shadow, every whisper, was a remnant of something buried alive long before me. And now I had joined them. I tried to scream, but the sound never left my throat. My shadow pressed a finger to its lips, commanding silence, then pointed upward, back toward the world above, where my apartment still stood. Somewhere, someone else would soon notice their shadow misbehaving, and the cycle would begin again.